Similar players to match with. I mean, he's obviously not the first person to get banned for doing something dumb. Dr. Disrespect is known for being aggressive. I mean, it's literally in his name. This game is terrible. Man, it's the worst Call of Duty ever. Of course, he can't go.
Bienvenue. Oui.
It seems like innocent fun until Shroud logged in later to see this. One of the strangest ways a creator got banned was critical was he picked up Halo Infinite. Because it was an early access, Shroud thought it'd be funny to break the game as fast as possible. But of course, this backfired.
I've been banned. Oh wait, it actually says the user is banned. Like forever?
J'ai toujours le meilleur temps.
Hi guys, today I got a special announcement.
Until I got to the glide. My nearest safe zone to this was the sand shortcut, but this was an island that I wouldn't be able to leave without touching road. In order to get back to the spot where I started, I would have to glide the entire way without touching down once. But luckily, we have a trick up our sleeves, motion glider. By following the rocket motion controls on while gliding, you can turn at a much sharper angle and go a lot faster. Doing this allows us to get just enough speed to make it all the way back.
Félicitations! Tu as gagné un trophée! Va plus vite dans les virages avec la glissade! Oui!
Left and following the edge all the way to the cavern area. From there, I was able to jump off the bit of off-road onto one of the bubble columns. And then I was just able to follow a trail of bubble columns all the way to the off-road on the other side. Then I got down to the off-road in the eel tunnel, but at the end there's a ramp that covers the entire length of the track, which meant that there was no way around this by staying in the off-road. Or was there? Andy Best was able to clip through the wall to end up on this little bit of off-road right out of bounds.
C'est quoi cette fumée? C'est quoi cette fumée?
J'ai toujours le meilleur temps.
Je sens.
From here, I was able to hop directly onto the boost panel and make it to the off-road on the raised platform. Then I followed it around to the other jump, which I was able to make in the same fashion. After that, the off-road is completely uninterrupted until the starting point. Donut Plains looks like it should be possible at first glance due to the large amount of we tried using the sharp programs to get enough weight, but it was basically
Félicitations! Tu as gagné un trophée! Pour obtenir une poussée de turbo pendant une glissade turbo... Oui!
I decided to try using the angled cloud before it as a ramp. I did this for quite a while, but kept getting just short of the clouds on the other side. I decided to try...
Magnifique! Super! toujours le meilleur temps. Félicitations! Tu as gagné un trophée! S'il y a une caisse TNT sur ta tête, commence vite à bondir! Si tu bondis plusieurs fois très vite, la caisse TNT tombe de ta tête avant d'exploser. Oui!
Parce que par machin, ça veut dire que si un mois tu es en retard dans tes affaires et que tu dans ton compte, tu prends un parce que c'est toi qui
Super! J'ai toujours le meilleur temps.
L'autre dans la gauche. ce que tu as fait.
Mais il se répond parce que vous n'avez pas tous mangé.
Moi, je vais manger.
Oui, il a pas mangé.
Je dois manger. Qui n'a pas mangé? Kenny, tu n'as pas mangé?
Je peux manger.
Mais pour ça, va, tu manges.
Ok.
Il a plus de il a lavé la vaisselle.
Parce que quand je vais sortir de quelqu'un par kilo, vous allez aller, vous mettez un tour, on change dedans.
Avec mon casque? Mais pourquoi tu n'avais pas de casque?
Non, je ne veux pas ok.
C'est ça que j'ai.
Non. Je suis quand même.
Quel est ceci, ça va?
D'ailleurs, est-ce que je peux reprendre une saucisse?
Pourquoi il y a une serviette sur le comptoir? Là, c'est la veste de qui ici? La veste, si c'est la veste à qui?
Pas moi.
À Thibaut. Les renards d'Orient.
Attends.
Starts off with SpongeBob sitting in his mailbox waiting for his mail. He receives a magazine called These Are 10 of SpongeBob's Worst Episodes of All Time. The 10th one being Squid Attacks, with a rating of 4.8. The episode starts with Squidward admiring how beautiful his house is, deciding to separate him from his prayer. SpongeBob tries to use the way explaining that Squidward being police recruiter is insane. Which obviously makes him mad, so he decides to just go inside and leave SpongeBob alone outside. So there's SpongeBob literally breaks into his house, which is pretty bad. But anyways, they end up just chilling and watching while this is happening, because they're actually really struggling and have nothing to do. And finally, the rom-com takes place on Squidward, and so Squidward actually tries to get a partner on the rom-com, starts running fast, and SpongeBob chases him. They get back to the rest of the traveling scene, they start traveling behind each other, saying he also has Squid police. And so SpongeBob tells him how to take care of the rom-com. It starts off with SpongeBob jumping out of his house on his motorcycle and biking to the boating test while doing some insane tricks and perfectly landing in the boat. Then he just crashes back and forth into the boat in front of him and behind him, and that's it. That settles the entire test. Because of this, Mrs. Puff ups up too much and she makes the boat start floating. Then they crash into the lighthouse, making Mrs. Puff explode. This is probably one of the most rushed intros and plain recording exams done in SpongeBob. I mean, usually the exams have like a full track of about 5 seconds. This one seems set up perfectly for fatal tests and consequences. But anyways, Mrs. Puff is in the hospital because she ruptured her inflation sac and now she can't walk. They start calling him Mrs. Pop. This makes her so mad she hops out of the bed and starts attacking him. To which the doctor literally stabs her with it. But he goes to sleep. Then her SpongeBob is sleeping. SpongeBob comes into her again and shows how working inside. But he's actually pretty good with her, so they're both pretty which they see some pretty good guys being quiet. Here's where they're going to demonstrate her and how dangerous it is. This is how services Puff becomes happy, because she gets a plan. If SpongeBob commits therapy, he can literally die and keep helping in every way. So he signs up for the therapy, and look at this man's look. He has an extremely old part and is wearing a sock. Keep in mind, all of his body is jacked in, huge parts. Also, SpongeBob can't even drive. So it's pretty much guaranteed. Well, after the SpongeBob gets literally a sponge, he can't recycle it. So he uses his sponge skin to fling some guy off a cliff across the entire ocean. And then he just drives randomly and somehow destroys every single professional derby guy. This obviously makes Mrs. Puff furious, and so she hops in a boat and decides to kill herself. But SpongeBob is somehow a good driver now and somehow destroys every single professional derby guy. This
Mais là, c'est un petit truc, depuis que je suis local maintenant. J'allais à la musculation, genre 3 fois par semaine. À côté, je faisais un peu de cardio par suite 2 fois par semaine. Et j'essaie de l'agilité, genre 3 fois par semaine. Et après, je vais aussi justement au terrain, j'étais. Mais en vrai, j'étais pas tout le temps en train de faire ça. Mais là, j'ai vraiment passé 3 semaines avant le camp. Donc, là, fait que je me tue pendant 3 semaines, 6 jours. Déjà, maintenant, je reprends de la glace. Je vais vers de chez moi. Je peux aller. En fait, il n'y a que des séances 2 fois par semaine. Du coup, juste que je parte, je vais y aller.
Quoi, il y a quelque chose ça avec une liste. En fait, j'ai entendu personne dans ces livres de écoute. Dans ces livres, on parle tout à fois de l'écoute. Et c'est une autre classe pour toi. Eh, mais les formations, ça. Non, on ne doit pas demander de écoute la fille. Désolée. Tiens, est-ce que tu en as pas besoin la première fois? Oui.
Pourquoi?
Regardez ce que ça fait. Je sais, je le mets. Ça s'arrête pas de ta vie. Qui fait pourquoi? Moi, je me reste.
Alors, tout le temps de suite à tes ordres est vraiment énervant.
Attends, c'est vraiment ça, c'est pensé? Bah, je vais être un peu triste, mais la vie va continuer. Un peu triste.
Oui, un peu plus. Parce que toi, tu me donnes 1 million d'ordres en même temps. Et on perd du tout que toi, tu les énerves. Non, on t'aime toujours.
I through the air. Sono and Patrick harass Scooter with his power until he finally gets him to leave. But of course they don't really leave. As he goes about his day, they continue to side whistle and it drives him absolutely insane. So Scooter tries running away from the Patrick, but they chase him. So he's not going to let him stop side whistling. The thing is, starts to go into it. We're all going to the competition, starting first at the bargain mark. They don't go too long on this guy, and it's kind of light and funny. But Squidward then decides to become a baby slide whistler and sit on a baby in a stroller, which, yeah. He continues using his power in harassing Bikini Bottom. For example, getting this little fish rocked by this jacked fish. Squidward ends up becoming wanted by the police and having all of Bikini Bottom riding to stop him. He escapes all of this though and slide whistles his way into stealing this truck from this guy. Now, it can't get worse from here, right? No. He drives off the cliff and explodes. And he looks like this now. All because of a slide whistle. So this episode isn't that bad in my opinion. I think it's a pretty silly concept. And honestly, I think it was probably made all because of some dude coming in the writing room with a slide whistle. Yo, watch this. And they created an entire episode off of it. I think it's impressive how they made an entire episode off a slide whistle joke. But I think this episode maybe received the rating it did because of how repetitive and kind of annoying it is to watch. The fifth worst episode is The Splinter, with a rating of 3.9. The episode starts with SpongeBob flipping the Krusty Krab sign to open and getting all ready for his day at work. But he accidentally flings his spatula upwards, getting it stuck on the ceiling. SpongeBob builds a very interesting box ladder and tries to grab the spatula, which he does a couple times, but doesn't even realize this and puts it back into the ceiling. And you're probably thinking this is where he's going to get a splinter. No. You see, he falls off and almost gets stabbed by a bunch of swords, but then gets saved by a sword and safely exits. See, the way he gets the splinters by tripping on tartar sauce and very disgustingly sliding his thumb against the wooden.
No. Excellent.
Mr. Krabs asks this answer, and it's gotten even worse. Squidward literally passes out. Then after all that build-up, after everything, Mr. Krabs just simply shoots the splinter. It blows up and shoots pus all over Mr. Krabs. He pays no mind to it, stating, "I thought I'd have to pay you workers' comp." After hearing this, Squidward beats himself up with the register super bad to try to get workers' comp, but turns out his shift just ended, so now he's injured for no reason. I'm starting to figure out that a lot of these worst episodes have a similar theme. The concept of these episodes are very bland and basic. Like, making an entire episode about a splinter is pretty insane. Also, every resolution is very unsatisfying and not worth the build-up. This episode is just pretty bad. Everything feels dragged out and jokes aren't even very good. It makes sense though. Keeping the splinter in someone's stomach for 11 minutes and trying your hardest to keep it entertaining sounds hard. Honestly, I think it's the right thing. The fourth worst episode is 1.3, so rating is They start getting kicked out and taking opportunity. This leads me back to Earth. My question to this man does is mean office. What is this? But anyway, these are probably something so this is an hour. But once I play stuff like this, it's not and we just got rolling. These ones actually wall, crack, recommend wall, it's obvious. It's a crap that's one of them. It's not all Two, which SpongeBob with his ridiculously good sense of smell says it smells like blubber, which I guess is a fancy way of saying whale. Turns out Plankton is very terrified of Pearl and runs away. Honestly, I think it's really cool how accurate this episode is. And it's cool they made this connection. I mean, the creator was a marine biologist. Anyways, this gives Mr. Krabs a great idea. Use Pearl to scare Plankton. The thing is, though, Pearl demands a bunch of money. We all know Mr. Krabs is greedy, so that's not going to happen. So he comes up with an even better plan. But he goes on. I don't know where freaking out and he escapes through the whale. Turns out he's not a snake. And the whale for a projection. This is actually him redeeming himself for telling Plankton what the formula was earlier. So this episode, I think, is an episode that is very creative and needs a slight education. Don't get me wrong, this episode is pretty bad. And one of the jokes is very inappropriate and wrong. But besides that, I think it's a little overhated. I just feel like after what we've seen so far, this episode was the most interesting to me. It honestly caught me off guard. It wasn't predictable. But it's still one of the worst episodes. So the third worst episode is Gary in Love. It has a rating of 3.5. We start with Gary watching a rom-com and seeing two fishes fall in love, which puts Gary in love. SpongeBob ruins this though and turns the movie off and takes Gary to Stanley Park, which looks pretty trash. He takes Gary off his leash and falls asleep on the back of the other fishes. Gary starts looking around and catches his eye on this girl's thing. He slithers over and goes on the other side of the seesaw, and they both romantically meow at him.
Félicitations! Tu as gagné un trophée!
Until his popular SpongeBob is purposely failing his driving test.
Plus tu récupères de frigo pas, plus...
The first ever episode is from Sequel. It starts off with SpongeBob getting ready for his 38th floating exam. Starts with an oral exam, which SpongeBob aces, which kind of makes him look like a genius. But then he gets in the SpongeBob starts to drive. He crashes, and Miss Puff blows up, which is something we also will see a lot during this video. Anyways though, the episode goes on with Patrick putting a walkie-talkie in SpongeBob's head so he can speak to him and give him the answers for the test. Here's where we get the first evidence SpongeBob is faking how bad he is at driving. Patrick being in SpongeBob's head and giving him the answers like turn left, turn on the car. I don't believe you could throw a random person in a car and just tell them what to do when they would just drive as perfect as SpongeBob. SpongeBob obviously has driving skills, and it shows here. As the episode progresses, SpongeBob almost reaches the finish line, but right before he does, he tells Miss Puff to cheat and he never crosses the finish line. SpongeBob fails his driving test, and instead of being sad about it, he's actually happy he gets to attend back to Miss Puff's class. This is something I also want to touch on, but not yet. He then unicycles away, which I also think is crazy, because personally, I think that's harder than driving a car. The next episode, Paul Monitor starts with SpongeBob being elected Paul Monitor and spending the entire class preaching about how great he is, how important this job is. He wastes the entire class with a speech, and Miss Puff feels bad, so she lets him wear the officer outfit for the rest of the day. This is where we get a glimpse into the power SpongeBob receives for being Mrs. Puff's student. He goes to the city and literally becomes a wanted criminal and destroys Bikini Bottom. In the end, SpongeBob gets surrounded by a bunch of cops and is about to go to jail until Miss Puff shows up. The cops realize she is responsible for him, and he goes to jail instead. Now imagine if in the last episode, SpongeBob passed his test. He wouldn't have been able to go out and do all these bad things and get away with it. Miss Puff is literally his get out of jail free card, and this won't happen. No free rides. Start off with SpongeBob failing the driving test. Again, Mrs. Puff is sick of him always failing and wants to get rid of him, so she decides to just pass him and give him a license, which is obviously a really bad idea. Miss Puff realizes this, and when she does, she tries to steal SpongeBob's boat, and it ends pretty badly. SpongeBob doesn't really get to enjoy his license in this episode, and there isn't much driving from him except failing his test, but the episode still does end with Mrs. Puff going to jail. The next episode, New Student Starfish, and where I want to really focus on what I said earlier, about SpongeBob enjoying school more than his license. So Patrick decides to attend boarding school with SpongeBob, and they arrive 3 hours early. You have to love the class so much to show up that early, because I would never. He then shows Patrick around and gets the most beautiful, astonishing place he's ever seen. He also brags about his golden stars, which he talks about like it's his purpose for life. It seems like this is a schedule for SpongeBob that he enjoys, and I can't see him ever giving this up just to drive a boat, especially since it wouldn't change much of his life. He seems to get around fine and enjoys his life to the fullest without a boat. Anyways, though, the episode doesn't have any boat driving, just SpongeBob and Patrick fighting over golden stars. If you wanted to counter my argument, you would probably show me the next episode, Driven to Tears. This episode starts off as usual, SpongeBob failing his driving test. Except this time, Patrick comes to support him and gets mad he fails, so he takes the test to see if it's rigged. But he passes the test and gets a brand new free car and then rubs it in SpongeBob's face. This really upsets SpongeBob and drives him crazy with jealousy. And this is exactly why it's a great counter argument. Why would he be purposely failing his test if he's jealous of Patrick's car? Well, because SpongeBob had no idea Patrick would be taking the test. He did his little thing of failing the test, got to see what would have happened if he didn't do that. That might be a major reach, but it also could be because he felt he lost his friend, because Patrick was spending more time with the car than SpongeBob. Anyways, though, he tears up Patrick's license and goes to jail for littering, which is kind of karma for the amount of times Mrs. Puff got locked up. He felt he lost his friend because Patrick was spending more time with the car than SpongeBob. Anyways, though, he tears up Patrick's license and goes to jail for littering, which is kind of karma for the amount of times Mrs. Puff got locked up. Now, an episode that helps my argument. Mrs. Puff, you're fired. In this episode, Mrs. Puff loses her job because she is deemed a bad teacher, since SpongeBob has failed his test 1,000,000 times. So they bring in Bikini Bottom's best teacher to come teach SpongeBob. He does pretty great. SpongeBob. Not only does SpongeBob fail his But here's where I wanted to find an awful driver and SpongeBob. An awful driver is someone who drives at the speed, probably texts his videos and red light, doesn't check the mirrors, doing normal stuff. But then there's SpongeBob, who literally does not care to destroy the talking about regularly, and probably kills a lot of fish, and seems to also be aware of it. This episode of driving to Anyways, like I said, he wasn't driving the boat, but Mrs. Puff thought he was, and he almost got his license. But when she found out he wasn't driving it, she tore her license up. And boating buddies, Squidward joins SpongeBob in boating class after trying to get distracting, some littering, and goes. Summer Job is an episode that supports my point that fast food is harder than driving. So SpongeBob causes Mrs. Puff to crash into the Krusty Krab. And to pay off the debt, she has to work at the Krusty Krab. Not having a license, but whatever. SpongeBob driving. It will perfectly away until SpongeBob drivers without even destroying things, which is exactly what he tries to do when he drives. In Bumper to Bumper, SpongeBob fails his test again, like always, and Mrs. Puff tries to find a new way to make him pass. So she takes him out in the middle of nowhere, where there's nothing he can destroy. She tells him to just focus on the road, and he goes into like a psychedelic trance that makes him into, once again, an amazing driver. Even on the highway, until Mrs. Puff freaks out, telling him he's on the highway. And from there, everything goes pretty haywire. But SpongeBob was driving perfectly. And I think once Mrs. Puff doubted his abilities, he realized he needed to go back into his bad driving persona. Anyways, he drives crazy and all over the place and lands in Mrs. Puff. PJ. In Tutor Sauce, Mr. Krabs tries to teach SpongeBob how to drive, and he crashes consistently into Krusty Krab and gives
Pour
Mr.
ouvrir
Krabs
cette
a
porte,
huge
tu
bill
dois
and a
arriver
ticket in the
premier
end.
dans les
It seems
4.
whoever teaches this man how to drive only receives torture. Also, SpongeBob drives bad this entire episode. Burst Your Bubble isn't much of a boat driving episode, as SpongeBob builds a bubble car and drives that instead, and then everyone starts driving it. In this episode also, Mrs. Puff, the boating instructor, tries driving a bubble boat and fails miserably, and needs to be coached by SpongeBob. This being another example of SpongeBob being smarter than he's getting credit for. Teacher's Pest is an episode where Mr. Krabs and Plankton attend boating school. Most of the episode is centered around them and their beef, but if you focus on SpongeBob, you can see him being a perfect student and actually completing the driving course before blowing up the entire world. But he did complete the driving course without any cursing. In Potato Pop, this is not the same so supposed to start the speaker this episode was once again perfect, which is also suspicious. How people feel this about CTR and some crashes. It seems weird for Potato which worked well, so it's also meant to be observed. Which is just another episode showing how bad of a driver he is. He tortures Squidward in his cats that touch scene. He then kicks Puff and makes her mad. Now I don't think SpongeBob was purposely trying to make this miserable, but I genuinely think he just enjoys the company and in his mind there next his friend. So he doesn't want to pass the test because he cherishes the relationship and he doesn't want to lose her and put her from passing her or part of his schedule. Now if this isn't enough, I'll take it really serious. In the first SpongeBob movie, SpongeBob drives absolutely perfect with driving at Tiny Penny. And I don't know, if you ever think some more videos up here, just watch what they only super ridiculous. When I was a kid, I was but now watching it as an adult, it makes me realize that the deeper meaning to this episode that this gorilla at the end is very, very suspicious. The episode starts off with SpongeBob and his gang skiing down a sandhill. SpongeBob decides he's going to show off doing impressions and tricks. Har, 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 I'm Squidward. But his show ends abruptly when he falls off the cliff and slams right onto his bottom. He's sent straight to the hospital where he's told that his gluteus maximus is okay, he's a very lucky boy. He then tells him he needs to be careful when he might hurt the iron butt. This is where we get introduced to the beginning of SpongeBob's agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is defined as extreme or irrational fear of entering open or crowded places, leaving one to the wall.
Papou est fatigué de regarder des courses en tresca.
The movie starts off with a little kid watching a documentary about an explorer named Charles Muntz. Charles claimed to discover an unknown species, some giant bird thing. The scientists claimed it was a hoax. Charles lost all of his life, vowed to go to Paradise Falls, said he won't come back until he captures the alive. Next we see the little kid running around the house. He sees that the fans will be happy. The girl screaming, "It's a children's movie!" Inside, trying to keep her face, she's looking upstairs, which makes him like Orlin. And she recruits him to her explorers. He tries to take me to his back, but he falls through the floor and breaks his neck. Later, the girl goes to the room and scares him again. Right through his mouth, because she has something to show him. It's her invention. She tells him about her dream to go to South America and live in Paradise Falls. Then she straight up pressures him into promising and looks down as a Boy Scout is escorting him.
Don't worry, Pops. We're almost across the street.
Something is different. He's in a great mood, which honestly is
Squidward's beautiful hair fly away, but this is when he gets a really, really bad idea. He draws a bird having sex with Squidward. It's beautiful. The drawing goes it starts to Also, the fact this pencil could have been used to erase actual people since SpongeBob was erased is terrifying. Imagine like this entire episode is so Anyways, though, this episode is just a classic. Doodlebob became such an iconic character, it genuinely left an impact on my life. I have talked about Doodlebob so many times in real life for some reason. The fourth trippiest episode is I Was a Teenage Gary. The episode starts off with Gary getting into it. Night of running from Snail Bob, Squidward ends up getting hit with the snail plasma, and the episode ends with Gary, SpongeBob, Squidward leaving Doodles, which is such a great Anyways, the whole atmosphere of this episode was really exciting, and the fact that Squidward went through a whole snail transformation was really disturbing. This is something you'd only see in a bad nightmare or the worst trip of your life. I'd rather see a demon than a Snail Bob and Squid Bob. But this episode is so iconic. I really enjoyed it and loved how weird it was. It just brings me back to Patrick heading home after a fun day at their favorite theme park.
Understand him because he's all alone. Tries to run out, so SpongeBob is instead of being sad about it, he's actually happy he gets to attend back in his first class next semester. This is something. Becomes a plot to destroy the kingdom. In the end, SpongeBob gets surrounded by You wouldn't happen if the new SpongeBob movie was leaked on Twitter. They're making a spin-off movie that focuses on Sandy Cheeks instead of SpongeBob. That is cool. It is. I think because when the speaker came out of the roof and blew up. This is the kelp shit. Being an old, crabby man gets some back pain. Because there's some security green sea snake, which looks so terrifying. This thing would devour plankton. But also for some weird, odd reason, SpongeBob is so happy. First, there's